So with the Toronto Blue Jays officially being in spring training, the offseason is done. It's time to look back and reflect on some of the players that could be of big impact in 2025.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. But for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As always, I'm Braden Iwasko. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasko, Carter First too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us out, gives you guys podcasts, shorts, live streams, videos, everything right here on YouTube. So make sure you go over there, hit that subscribe button as well. Discord link is down in the description. We did get a ton of interest in the fantasy league, so we will have one of them set up and ready to go for probably first week of March, most likely. So keep an eye out for that. We will announce it on the podcast. So be the first to get in. I think there's going to be 18 spots, I believe, with me and Carter each taking up 2. There'll be 18 spots for you guys to get in and join that fantasy league. So make sure you are the first to click that link. Carter, a lot to get into. We have been we talked a lot about the offseason, but we haven't really given it a full deep dive. This is what happened. These are the players in, players out. How will they make a difference in comparison to what this team looked like in 2024? And the offseason grade. We got to give it a grade. I know other sources and stuff have done theirs already. I'm not a huge fan of some of the grades given out. Some of them I think it's way too high. Some of them too low. Some of them just their reasoning doesn't really make sense to me. But whatever. We'll get right into it. Carter, I guess I'm going to start it here. I'll give a list of all players in, all players out for this offseason. First off, the Blue Jays' key additions. Outfielder Anthony Santander, Max Scherzer, Andrus Gimenez, Jeff Hoffman, Yimi Garcia, if you want to count him, I guess. Nick Sandlin, Amir Garrett, Miles Straw, Christian Bethancourt, Ali Sanchez, Jacob Barnes, and the key subtractions for the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays, Jordan Romano to the Phillies, Spencer Horwitz to the Pirates, and Henny Cabrera to the Mets. Carter, I guess out of all of those guys, hearing all the additions, all of the subtractions from this roster, I guess let's start it here. How was the up and down emotion of the offseason? Obviously, not getting Juan Soto, not getting Roki Sasaki was another one. And then also not extending Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's a lot of key takeaways here from the offseason. What is I guess when you look back on it, what was the biggest moment here for the Toronto Blue Jays?
I think a big moment that kind of brought me back to maybe reality, got me a little bit more hopeful for the 2025 season is before the Jeff Hoffman signing. We were pretty down in the dumps. We're like, Andrus Gimenez, again, if we have other moves happen, this is a pretty good move. We know how good he is defensively, maybe the best defensive player in all of baseball. Spencer Horwitz, obviously love the guy, but you get a guy like Andrus Gimenez, if he can kind of capture that bat again, which is a massive if. That is going to be a massive trade. It's going to work out pretty well for the Jays. Again, there's some cap issues down the line on just Jimenez getting a lot of money, but that is a problem for a later date. I think it's that Jeff Hoffman signing, though. Before then, I'm like, are we going to have to run this team into 2025? Ross Atkins has been asleep for 3 months, it seems like. And then obviously coming off of that season that we had, we weren't playing competitive baseball since July. It felt like we had 6 months of offseason at that point. Again, there's some selling at the trade deadline. Things happen. The trade deadline was an overall success, I think. Again, you don't want to be there at that point, but when you kind of got your cards dealt the way they were, I think that was handled pretty well from Ross Atkins, and we'll have hopefully some guys make a big impact on this team right now for this the season. The Will Wagner's, Joey Loperfido, obviously from that trade deadline, but it's the Jeff Hoffman sign. I think at that point we realized that Ross Atkins was working. Things were going to get better. Jeff Hoffman started the domino effect after obviously Santander being a massive signing. So I think that for me is where I got some hope back in, especially when you look at how the offseason started. Missing out on Juan Soto, for me, never really thought we were in on Juan Soto, seeing $765 million. I don't think that contract is going to age too well anyway. The one that hurt me a ton was the Roki Sasaki stuff. That was one I think I believed the most out of the big three that we kind of talked about with the Juan Sotos, the Shohei Ohtanis, and the Roki Sasaki. I saw that trade from Miles Straw, And at that point, I'm like, Ross Atkins would not do this. He's a fairly conservative general manager. Ross Atkins would not do this if he didn't think they had a shot at getting Roki Sasaki. So they freed up that international bonus pool. I thought there was a real chance that Roki Sasaki could come to the Toronto Blue Jays. But obviously, my heart was ripped out of my chest, went to the place that just made sense, the Los Angeles Dodgers. So it has been a pretty emotional roller coaster offseason. But overall, when we're looking at the additions compared to the off seasons, or the additions compared to the players that have left, I think the Toronto Blue Jays have gotten significantly better this offseason.
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument there. And when we get into the grades of it all, sort of coming up in the next few segments here, we will have to think about all of the subtractions plus all of the things missed this offseason, which we will talk about. But Carter, I wanted to go in. I did a little calculation on WAR in versus WAR out, wins above replacement, that is. And so I went through the list, and the total WAR in after a couple of guys were in the negative, so obviously that doesn't help. But the total WAR in was 8.9 wins above replacement. The total WAR out, so the guys that left, was 0.8. So it's a significant value that this team has added through the offseason. And yeah, when we go back and look through all of the additions, I think you're right. I think that Jeff Hoffman one was the table setter for a lot of things to come. I think at that point, yeah, the Andrus Gimenez trade happened, and we said, well, this is fine, but if this is all we got, this is horrible. And then Jeff Hoffman signed, and we're like, okay, we see that he is doing things behind the scenes, and not everything is going to happen like Juan Soto or Roki Sasaki, where everything's very public and you're getting updates day by day. That's not how normal off seasons go. It's a lot of talking behind the scenes, a lot of media not 100% knowing for sure who's targeting who. They might have a clue, but they're not really dialed in as much as some of those big guys. So yeah, Jeff Hoffman, huge for sure. Another big one for me was the Anthony Santander signing. I think that's the signing, when I look back at this offseason, that I'm going to think made this offseason for this team. And I think without getting Anthony Santander, we are looking at this offseason very differently. As much as we can be happy with Jeff Hoffman and what he's going to bring to the bullpen, same with bringing back Yimi Garcia. I think if you don't get Anthony Santander, I think we go into 2025 very scared of what this season could be, because we didn't address the one big need, which is an extra power bat. Bringing in Anthony Santander solved that problem. Obviously, a lot of people, even myself, would have wanted another big bat to join this lineup. That didn't happen. Obviously, Pete Alonso, Blue Jays were somewhat in on that as well. Didn't get him. I think me and you sort of had the assumption that he was going to go back to the Mets all along, which ended up happening. So a lot to go in here. I guess let's talk about the Andrus Gimenez part of it, because him and Anthony Santander are the two guys that are bringing in the highest WARs. Anthony Santander is a guy that I don't necessarily know will have the same impact as he did in 2024. I don't think it's realistic to expect him to hit 44 home runs again. Like we've talked about him before. I think if you pencil him in around the 35 mark, I could see that be very plausible. I don't think he'll reach 40. And then the Andrus Gimenez part of it, having a 4 WAR for Andrus Gimenez, obviously comes mostly from his defensive output. We need his bat to be better. If he gets his bat going as well as very solid Gold Glove, if not Platinum Glove defense, that's a great addition for this team as well. But there's a lot of ifs and buts around this offseason so far.
Yeah, when we regard those two players, Anthony Santander pretty much accumulating all of his WAR offensively, and you look at Andrus Gimenez doing it the other way, pretty much accumulating all of his WAR defensively. So if you can kind of get these guys to meet in the middle, I think it's more likely that we see an Andrus Gimenez resurgence than Anthony Santander all of a sudden kind of figuring out how to play defense. You just look at the overall characteristics, like Anthony Santander is not very fast. The arm is okay at best. Right, again, when you're not very fast, your range isn't going to be that good. There's just not a lot of room for improvement when we're talking about Anthony Santander defensively. Can he be serviceable? Sure, but you're not really relying on the WAR to bump up on that defensive output. When you look at Andrus Gimenez, again, with spring training, but he started out the spring fairly hot. This is a guy that a lot of people have been talking about. A lot of people are very high on as well. The defensive WAR is going to be there. And when you talk about this team bringing in, 8.9 WAR, and they lost 0.8 WAR. Let's just say that's 8 wins. The Toronto Blue Jays had won 74 games last season. You get 8 more wins. That's 82. You get Bichette being regular Bo Bichette or even half what Bo Bichette should be. Let's say that's at minimum 3 wins. I'm going to put it at 4, though. That brings us to 86. A couple more things happen, and the Toronto Blue Jays are in a wild card spot. So I think when we're looking at this offseason, we're evaluating the offseason, I don't think you can question the moves that were made during this offseason. I think like Jeff Hoffman's a great addition, obviously. Anthony Santander, Andrus Jimenez. The problem is when you look at how the Toronto Blue Jays roster compiled before all of those moves, how good was our roster before going into the offseason? I think that's why people still have some issues with this team, because at the end of 2024, this team was not very good on paper. There was a ton of uncertainty. There's a ton of guys with zero MLB experience. And now we're going into this 2025 season in terms of the batting order. You like George Springer probably going to be slotted at 1. You don't know what he's going to do. He had a horrible season in 2024. Can't get better. We think he will get a little bit better, but George Springer's prime is clearly behind him. You have Bo Bichette, not that worried about Vladimir Jr., Santander. You hope Alejandro Kirk can take those steps. But you look at the rest of this order, like Andrus Jimenez, like I don't know if we're going to get, I don't think we're going to get 2022 Andrus Jimenez. Can it be better than last year? You hope so. Raul Martinez, big question mark. Will Wagner, big question mark. Ernie Clement can be serviceable, but is this a guy you want to kind of rely on? Then you have the backup catcher, Christian Bethancourt. There's still a lot of volatility in the middle to bottom of this order. So when we look at the offseason, a lot of good moves happened, but I think the narrative is going to be, was it enough to put the Blue Jays over the hump and allow them to make the playoffs this upcoming season?
Yeah, Carter, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We're going to talk about that more. Is this enough? Also, an update on Joey Loperfido after taking a headfirst dive into the center field wall. I'll give you guys an update on that and what they are sort of looking at for a timetable on him and what the conclusion is. Then we will also get into the offseason grades in the third segment. So make sure you guys stick around to hear how we value this team and this offseason moving into 2025.
Today's episode is sponsored by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk on a road trip or just need a quick protein boost. That's always my to-go snack. It's very convenient if you're in a pinch. I have always said on this podcast when I do this ad, I always end up leaving myself with 0 to no time to eat anything. And then whether I'm going out with friends, whether I'm going to work, I always feel like I'm very hungry. And then obviously the energy is not where it needs to be. With Wonderful Pistachios, it helps me have a convenient snack choice, keeps me satiated for a long enough time that it does give me the option later down the road to get a meal in me and get those energy stores back up. Another nice factor with Wonderful Pistachios is that they are complete protein and they provide all 9 essential amino acids. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
There we go. Now we're on the right side. Carter, just a quick update here I want to throw out on the Joey Loperfido situation. So the first hit of the day was driven to deep center field. Joey Loperfido sort of ranging back to catch the ball, trips a little bit on the dirt, and then smacks headfirst right into the wall. Very awkward fall. I thought it was going to be very worse than what it was. This is from Shai Davidi. So Joey Loperfido exits game after crashing into center field wall, trying to chase down Victor Scott smash. Scary moment, like I said. He then goes on to say, Blue Jays say Joey Loperfido came out of the game with neck discomfort. John Schneider said, Joey Loperfido's all right, no concussion symptoms or anything. Got checked out. It's more upper back neck discomfort. We'll check it out tomorrow and hopefully doesn't miss much time. So, yeah, but by the way he smacked into that wall, I'm assuming he's going to be out for a game or two just with discomfort, the way his shoulder sort of bent in. It did not look good at all for those of you who watched the game yesterday. So hopefully he comes back better than ever, and he'll be okay. It seems like he will be, but scary situation for sure with already one center fieldman down.
You never want to see this happen, especially with a younger player. But for the scenario that happened, for the way it looked, I think this is best case scenario coming out of it with neck discomfort. Could have been a whole lot worse. Could have been concussion stuff. Could have been, obviously, when you hit your head on the wall. It's a pretty hard object, pretty hard substance. So things could have went a lot worse. For a guy like Joey Loperfido, again, you want him to have that full spring training. But again, when it's this early on in spring training, we still have over a month until we have baseball games. keep this guy out for a week if it needs it. Again, neck discomfort, he'll probably have to have some massages, probably have a pretty stiff neck for the next couple of weeks. But especially, like you said, with Daulton Varsho being out to start the season, even though we have seen a lot of positive stuff regarding Daulton Varsho and his progressions, it looks like he's taken live batting practice. He might actually play in a couple spring training games down the line. So we're going to have to see where Daulton Varsho is in his timeline. So we might not need a center fielder for as long as we kind of thought going into the season, which obviously is a good sign, but a scary thing to see for a young player. But speaking of spring training, kind of going into this, we had one of the greats pitch for the Toronto Blue Jays, a guy that was one of the biggest offseason signings. Just overall thoughts. Max Scherzer, seeing him with the Toronto Blue Jays, having 4 strikeouts. Again, it is spring training. But overall, just seeing the Mad Max in Toronto Blue Jay Blue.
It was awesome. I'm not going to lie. It was sort of a fever dream a little bit. But yeah, I was a little bit worried on the first batter when he did take that ball deep to center on Scherzer. I was like, oh man, here we go. Good thing it didn't leave. It was a triple, but it was a little bit scary because that fastball sort of hung over the plate. Again, not very hard whatsoever. And then you could sort of see as each batter came up, he was ramping up the speeds of that fastball. And yeah, overall, he looked pretty good. He sort of this is going to be bad to say, but sort of what I expected a little bit. I expected Scherzer to go out there and have a good spring training because, it is his first outing. He's a guy that's done it before. And yeah, just overall, it was a ton of fun to watch him out there. And then Bowden Francis to get in there as well. It was nice to see him, sort of serving as well.
See, a lot of these guys in their spring training performances, I'm going to say probably 85 to 90% of them, I don't care how they do in spring training for the vast majority. Like Max Scherzer is probably the last guy that I care about having a good or bad spring training. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., another guy, I don't really care how he does in the spring. When we talk about spring training, we're looking for storylines. We're looking for different things whether it's at the plate, whether it's pitching, whether it's how they're commanding their pitches, the pitch sequencing at the plate, just the hacks they're taking, the quality of hacks, the quality of pitches that they're swinging at, just kind of how confident they look in the box. I'm not really worried about the stat lines, as we saw with Bichette having a single, which was just hit the shortstop. Like if you're stat watching, like that's completely misleading. Alan Roden had another guy, one of his doubles. Roman Anthony just kind of misplayed a ball. They ruled it as a double. So it is nice, obviously, to see those nice stat lines early on in spring training, but it is spring. You got some guys in high A that we're never going to see this upcoming season. So I'm taking a lot of things with a grain of salt when it comes to spring training. Obviously, you want your Elvis Martinez's to show out. You want Will Wagner to have a good spring training. You probably want Bowden Francis to have a good spring training. Yariel Rodriguez, the one thing I'm looking for him. Didn't really have the command his first appearance. That was something he struggled with last season. If you can start commanding his pitches, start throwing more strikes, that is going to be very beneficial for a guy like Yariel Rodriguez. But there's another question I wanted to ask you, as we have played 3 games of spring training, or the Toronto Blue Jays have played 3 games of spring training. Where are you kind of at with how fired up you are watching the Toronto Blue Jays? Obviously, with baseball being back, it is awesome to see. But at some point in spring training, I'm not sure where it happens for you, but we get to a point where I'm like, can we just get into the season already? Especially when we get to later on in March, we have an injury with Joey Loperfido here. When we get to the middle of March to like the end of March, like really not a lot of good things can happen. The only thing I can see really happening is players getting injured, which just happens in baseball, but not exactly what you want to see. Where are you kind of at with spring training right now? Are you still enjoying watching the Toronto Blue Jays games? Are you watching the full 9 innings of these games? Just where are you at is overall how long spring training is?
Yeah, it's a little long for me. Like, honestly, I'm even when I watch NHL, the preseason stuff, I don't really pay much attention to. I might throw on a game if I'm not doing anything. Whereas with the MLB, I do pay more attention. Like maybe for the first 4 innings of a game, I'm really like dialed in watching some guys, how their at bats are going, what they're swinging at. I really enjoy that just to see how these guys will perform later in the season. So like right now, I'm okay. I'm not like if the season started today, I'd be thrilled. Like I'd be over the moon because as much as I say that, these games don't mean anything and it doesn't hold the same weight. So we'll have to see. I think I'm a little bit in the middle, I guess. Some things I'm excited to watch. The first 4 or 5 innings today were pretty fun. Davis Schneider, seeing how his at-bats are going. Again, I'm a Davis Schneider fan, so I'm watching his at-bats a little bit more closely. Him not swinging at pitches outside of the zone, this, at least in spring training, is really nice to see him getting back to what made him a good player. And that's, knowing the strike zone, not swinging at balls out. So like little things like that is what I really enjoy about spring training, being able to pick apart players a little bit instead of, worrying about the overall, I guess. But yeah, I think probably after another week and a half of this, I'm gonna be like, all right, like it's time. Guys are gonna start, we might see an injury like the Joey Loperfido one where something goes bad, and then I'm gonna be really upset that, it was for a nothing game. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I wish it was shorter. I wish it wasn't like I thought like if this was 2.5 weeks, I would be like, okay, this is a good amount of time. But there are so many games coming up that mean nothing that I'm sort of yeah, if I tune in for 4 or 5 innings, that's good enough for me. I don't need to see the single A, double A guys getting their shot right now, unless it's something I'm really, really excited to watch. Like if Ricky Tiedemann decides to pitch in whatever year, then okay, I'll be excited for that. Or Jake Bloss going in, that's a guy I want to see. Yeah, Relvis Martinez, but they're more likely to be playing in the first 4 or 5 innings. So I don't know. Take it or leave it, I guess, for me.
Where I'm at with the games is right now, obviously, like it's nice to see just baseball being back. Like I'm almost watching the full games. I watched almost the full first game. After that, I mean, like if you're watching more than the first 5 innings of a baseball game, like good on you. Like you are clearly committed to the work. Like there's guys that like we have a podcast and we're like, who is this guy from single A and why do I even care about him? Obviously, when like you said, if it's a younger guys coming up, guys that actually have a shot of being on the Toronto Blue Jays, or even just the younger players, like if Arjun Namala was taking at bats, like that'd be something I would be watching. But do I care that Charles McGee from wherever is playing in single A in the 7th inning against a single A guy on the St. Louis Cardinals that we're never going to see? No, absolutely not. So right now, like since we are still in February, it is nice to see baseball being back. But for me, as soon as you kind of get to March, early on March, it's like, okay, like let's just get on with the season already. Like we know kind of where we're at here. Again, I do understand why spring training is that long. There is a lot of benefits to it for the players, obviously the pitchers. Just that ramp up period is so essential. But like when we're comparing this to like the NFL, the NHL, just it's so long compared to a lot of these other leagues. So it is a little bit frustrating to see in that stance. But again, it's baseball being on is better than nothing at this point. And you get to see some of our favorite Blue Jays, obviously, kind of smacking around the diamond, or in this case, Max Scherzer making his first Toronto Blue Jays appearance, but even though it is in spring training. I kind of wanted to circle back to a little bit of this offseason, just some of the players that we lost. You went over a lot of the players that we did end up losing, and I'm going back from the start of 2024. So this includes kind of the trade deadline and the offseason. Starting pitching, I want to kind of start here. Max Scherzer being the guy that came in, Jake Bloss kind of asterisk with the trade deadline, Yusei Kikuchi being out. Honestly, just looking at these two, like it's nice to have Jake Bloss for the future, but Kikuchi is better than Max Scherzer. I think that has to be where we're at. Starting pitching, in theory, got a little bit worse, unfortunately, going into the year. But this is under, like, you have Kevin Gausman, who's coming off of not a Kevin Gausman type season. The splitter just never really found it. It wasn't getting that swing and miss stuff. Jose Berrios, you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. Chris Bassitt, I think he's going to be a high 3s, low 4s ERA guy. You kind of know what you're getting from there. Bowden Francis is going to be a big question mark as well. Is he going to be as good as he was in the second half of the season? So overall, starting pitchers, kind of where I'm at, is I think we did get a little bit worse. But when you talk about like Alek Manoah coming back later on in the season, you talk about Kevin Gausman having to bounce back. There is a lot of leeway for this pitching staff to be better, at least from the starting pitchers, than they were last season.
Yeah, and again, we don't know what Max Scherzer is going to bring to the table. We don't know how many innings he's going to bring. We don't know how effective he's going to be. For a guy at that age, I don't know what you expect, but I think the what I've always had in the back of my mind is their idea for this year is to have somebody until Alek Manoah resurfaces, and he's looked fantastic in some of the workouts and in him throwing and things like that. So again, you want to have pitching depth, but when you have Alek Manoah, do you really want him to be sidelined or Bowden Francis not get the opportunity? Or like the Max Scherzer thing for me is a placeholder until Alek Manoah gets back. And then if he's playing great and Chris Bassitt isn't, then you have some decisions to make. If Bowden Francis isn't having the best year, then you have, again, decisions to make. But it gives them opportunity without having to go and pay a Yusei Kikuchi coming off of one of probably his best season. So I don't know. Yes, it's worse, but in the long term, it's not enough that I'm necessarily concerned about it. I'm still very happy with the pitching staff that we have. So I don't know. It's sort of one of those gray areas for me.
Well, and there's still opportunity for Ryan Yarbrough if he need to open games. Obviously, Yariel Rodriguez being in the bullpen, we're gonna have to see where he can find success this season. That's really the only place that, like, when you're looking at the offseason compared to 2024 going to 2025, that you could even argue that this team got worse. Like when you look at the bullpen, significantly better. One
Yeah.
guy that obviously Jordan Romano hurts losing a little bit, but you get Jeff Hoffman, big sign, Nick Sandlin. You get some guys returning. Hopefully, a full healthy season from Erik Swanson. I don't think you can say that this bullpen got worse in any facet. And then obviously getting Anthony Santander on just Jimenez, you do lose out on Spencer Horwitz. I guess you can like go back to the Justin Turners, the Danny Janssens. I think Danny Jansen leaving might be a blessing in disguise for a guy like Alejandro Kirk. Again, the way he started spring, it is spring training, but you got to spin zone the positives some way. I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays are undefeated this season. We can talk about that right now. 3-0. Are you kidding me? Let's go 162-0 when the regular season starts. But like just looking at some of these other guys like Christian Bethencourt, I'm not going to be like overly excited about, but it's a guy that's going to have to kind of step up and be that backup catcher role. But out of all the guys, I guess, that we have lost over this last year, who is one guy that you're like, I wish we had this guy on the team. This is going to kind of suck seeing him be successful somewhere else.
I want to say Yusei Kikuchi because I think he has the opportunity to be the best, but I think realistically it's Jordan Romano. I think watching Jordan Romano close for another team or be a part of another team's bullpen is really going to hurt. Just seeing, again, I don't know how good he's going to be or how effective, but that one's going to sting for sure. You know, when we play the Phillies and he comes out of the pen against his old team, that's going to be a tough moment for sure.
Yeah, for me, it's got to be Jose Claus. I mean, you don't have anyone that electric coming out of the bullpen. Like, nobody's going to be setting records like that, unfortunately, as we maybe have an immaculate inning from Jeff Hoffman or something. No, but realistically, I think the one that I don't think this would be as inflated if he didn't go to the specific team. But for me, it's going to be weird seeing Danny Jansen in a Rays jersey. It's not going to be something that I'm going to be too excited to see. I do wish him the best. Obviously, we love Danny Jansen on this podcast, but just seeing him in a Tampa Bay Rays jersey, probably launching off someone in the first appearance that we see Jano, that one's going to be a little bit of a weird one to see. And then our boy Daniel Vogelback, where we saw in the flesh that almost had a cycle when we were at the Rogers Center. Like, who's going to provide that power from the left side? Like Santander switch hitter, I guess, but he's not really going to emulate the full Vogelback experience.
Well, dude, what's hilarious talking about Daniel Vogelback, I go back and look to some of the TikToks we did when we were down in Toronto. And everybody at that time, that was coming off of the Danny Burgers
Yeah,
like
home run double
legacy
single.
game.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, Danny Burgers is the man. He's our boy. And then like a week later, I don't think anybody was talking about him, but hilarious that he was a Toronto Blue Jay last year. Just insane. Carter, let's take a quick break. Let's come back. We want to go over our off-season grades, how we're going to officially grade this off-season for the Toronto Blue Jays. Yeah, and we'll see how. I think our numbers or letter grade is going to be very different, but stay tuned for this when we come right back. All right, I'm going to let you start. Give me your off-season grade for this Toronto Blue Jays organization, taking into consideration, again, missing out on Juan Soto, missing out on Roki Sasaki, not getting the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension done, bringing in all the pieces that were brought in, making the trades that were made. And yeah, I guess the hope moving into 2025 as well to surround everything.
See, I would have a different answer depending on like how we're trying to answer this question. If we're looking at strictly the additions to this baseball team, I think my letter grade would be higher. But like there were so many superstars, so many good baseball players that the Toronto Blue Jays seem to be in on and got a podium finish just 100 times this offseason. We went over the list before. I'll mention a few of them, like the Corbin Bird one hurt a little bit. Roki Sasaki sucked. Teoscar Hernandez, not exactly ideal. Pete Alonso, we kind of knew. But again, just a few of the names there. Just too much hope, I guess, that we had going into this offseason. And it kind of got ripped away from us at a lot of times. So like it depends how I want to view this emotionally. I mean, like that, it wasn't that fun. Like I don't want to go through this again. But when you're looking at it from just a logical standpoint, when you're looking at some of the guys that we did add, I think you got to give Ross Atkins a B here. I think I like a lot of the moves. I think maybe we could have done a little bit more. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. signed that extension. He probably gets an A from me. That's obviously going to lower his letter grade a little bit as well. Just the lack of Bichette extension talks, not exactly something that you want to see either. Again, when you're looking at his club, when you're looking at his viewpoint on the situation, coming off a career low year, we always say you don't want to necessarily sell high on some guys. you don't want to buy high on some guys. Whereas you have Bichette, are you going to sign your contract extension, maybe a 6, 7, 8-year extension when you just take 225 when you had a negative WAR in 81 games? So that makes sense in that standpoint. But I would just would like to see a little bit more positive things coming from the Bichette fronts. But I think right now I'm comfortable giving Ross Atkins and the front office a B for this offseason.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I think a lot of people are around that. And weirdly, I'm lower than you. I'm at a B minus, but I think I have a better outlook on what was done. I think the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension not happening is a huge, huge, huge weight that is going to be on this team moving into 2025. And that's why it's lowered so much. The Roki Sasaki of it, the hope, the up and down offseason of what was going to happen, what wasn't going to happen, sort of put me through the ringer. And I think that when you looked at all of the opportunity that there was this offseason, I think you would have thought more would have been done, even though I caveat that by saying, I think that they've done everything that I wanted them to do for 2025. Further than that, maybe not. But for 2025, they've addressed multiple needs for this team. The starting rotation, which pushes Yariel Rodriguez to the bullpen. Nice. Getting Max Scherzer, also cool signing. Santander, getting him, shoring up that power bat in left field, huge. Andrus Gimenez, as much as I didn't love this immediately because it wasn't a power bat, now that they got Santander, I liked the second base addition. Really good glove. Hopefully you're looking for a bounce back from him offensively. I think that's an okay one. But then bringing back Yimi Garcia, getting Jeff Hoffman, Nick Sandlin, all in the bullpen, paired with, the bump from Yariel Rodriguez as well. I think there are a lot of great things that go into what this offseason was strictly for 2025. That you're right. If we were basing this just off of the additions brought in comparison with taking all the emotion and the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and misses all out of it, I think that you're looking at a really, really high grade. I think they're a team that upgraded some of the most out of the entire league. I really like the direction that they went. Like I said, one more big bat would have been great. But at the end of the day, I think it's a B minus just because of sort of everything that encompassed this offseason. But we're pretty close.
I think when we look at this team from a bullpen standpoint, I think they can compete with anyone. I think this team is going to be a lot better from a bullpen perspective. I think that might be one of the Blue Jays' strong suits when it was one of, by far, the worst things the Toronto Blue Jays had last season. Starting pitching, I think will get slightly better. I think we can kind of know what we're going to get. We have so many veterans on this pitching staff, so I don't think there's anyone that's going to take this massive leap, but I don't think there's going to be anyone that has this massive regression either. The only thing that, for me, has a little bit of question marks is this offense. There's a lot of players that haven't put up consistent seasons back-to-back. There's a lot of players that have been below league average hitters. When we talk about Daulton, Varsho, Andrus, Jimenez, Ernie, Clement, you're not going to expect a whole lot out of him. Then you got guys like Will Wagner, who you're probably going to have to rely on this year. As high as people are on Will Wagner, this guy's played less than 30 games in the MLB. That's just simply how it is. Joey Loperfido, again, having the injury. That's not going to be great for him in spring training. Again, won't hold him out forever. George Springer, how's he going to do? I'm almost just penciling in Bichette all-star season. That's just where I'm at with Bichette. Maybe that's a little bit bold of me from last season, but I don't care. I'm a Bichette ride or die. So there's a lot of things that can go right for the Toronto Blue Jays in 2025, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong, especially offensively. The MLB has been really showing the batting orders and the lineups that some of these other teams have. I saw the Texas Rangers order. I didn't realize how disgusting that lineup was. That's going to be a problem if they are firing on all cylinders. The Orioles lineup still really good. The Yankees lineup probably better on paper than the Toronto Blue Jays. The Red Sox lineup probably better. So again, things can happen. A lot of players can take these massive steps, and if we get some progression from some of these younger guys, this can be a very good offensive team. But still a lot of question marks, still a lot of reason that some people are saying the Toronto Blue Jays might even finish 5th in the AL East. That's not where we're at. That's probably never where we're going to be at. We're going to be optimistic about this baseball team. But there is still some questions that are hopefully going to be solved as we kind of progress through spring training, and are definitely going to be solved in the first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, man, it's going to be really interesting. I'm actually really, really excited for opening day. I know I usually am. But I think there's a lot of pressure on this organization going into 2025. So I'm really, really excited to see if they can live up to that pressure or I guess outdo the garbage that the people think that this team is going to be. We get very differing opinions on. Some people think that this team's going to be just horrible. Some people think, wow, this team is going to have the biggest bounce back maybe of all time and be some great team. We're more a little bit in the middle where we think that they're probably going to be fighting for that wild card, but it could go any way. That's just the craziness of baseball and what it is. Let us know. Give us your guys' grade for this team's off season. Let us know what you guys think. Again, tune in for tomorrow's episode. Can't wait to talk more Blue Jays. Hopefully we get more news out of spring training, some more interesting games as players will start to play, like Anthony Santander and George Springer. We will see their first games. Can't wait for all of that. Carter, anything else before we kick out of here for the day?
Not too much. Just wanted to say we appreciate the support recently, the likes, comments, subscriptions, everything that does come with the podcast. But we have noticed that a bunch of you guys are not subscribed. So if you are tuning in, coming back to all the podcasts, it does help us out a ton. Also keeps our podcast shorts, whatever we do post at the top of your page. I'm just excited to watch a little bit more spring training. Excited to see Anthony Santander in his first game. Just praying to God, knock on wood, no more injuries for the Toronto Blue Jays. That is something that can turn this season up on its head very quickly. Just want to say thank you guys for watching, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.